Hey, it's Freddie Cruz, and I am digging deep into the archives from earlier this year to a conversation I had with Jack Carr when he was in town. Jack is the best-selling author of the Terminal List series, which has been adapted into an Amazon series starring Chris Pratt. He's a former Navy SEAL and is the host of the Danger Close podcast. His latest novel is Only the Dead, and if you read one book this holiday season, it's gotta be this one. Jack and I recorded this conversation in front of an audience at Murder by the Book, which, by the way, is a killer local area bookshop. So, this holiday season, shop small. We had a blast talking about his part in the Amazon series, his writing process, and we even had some stellar audience participation. Catch up with Jack and get his latest book, Only the Dead, at officialjackcarr.com. And be sure to listen to Danger Close wherever you get your podcasts.
Hi, I'm Ed Sheeran.
This is Bruno Mars.
Hey, it's Katy Perry.
This is your man Flo Rida with Freddie Cruz.
This is AJ Mitchell with Freddie Cruz.
Freddie Cruz.
Freddie Cruz.
Tell your Chico pick Mr. 305 and you already know what it is.
My name is Freddie, and it's time to cruise through HTX. We're recording, so
Here we are. So I'm supposed to hold this
and
like that.
Yes.
Wow,
and
what
there's
is
no.
it? What's this microphone? Look, does that look like? How long has this store been here? This is going to be worth something. It probably is now. That's awesome. Yeah, seriously.
I can almost guarantee you my dad will flip that on eBay for about $200, not even joking.
Seriously. There it is. Exactly. That's my time machine for those listening. I'm building a time machine. We can get to that later. We can talk all about the time machine. I'm excited about it.
I asked the crowd who here has not seen the Terminal List series on Amazon, and nobody raised their hand, so everyone has seen it. This is not a spoiler alert. So you, as one of the executive producers, I have to ask, why in the Sam hell would you kill yourself off? Why would you be okay with that?
Because you have to, when you get offered a cameo, you kind of got to play it a little bit. You have to think about what they're offering you and then kind of maneuver to be in a scene that is very hard to edit out. Yep. So you can't just be like, oh, be the store shop person here in this scene that's not moving the story forward, and then oops, snip, and then you're not in it. So in this case, that scene was going to have to be in it because it was important to move the story forward with Reese and Katie, and so that was the one.
But you couldn't find somebody else?
I figure it also set something up where I could possibly get killed in every one of these things.
Okay. All right. So
I'm thinking that'll be my thing.
Are we thinking clean-shaven Jack Carr? This is
Exactly.
like, no one knows that he shaved.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I shave my head. I'll shave the beard.
And the beard.
I do a little different every time. It's kind of what I'm thinking. But you're the first to hear that. I haven't told the showrunner or Chris or Antoine or anybody. So let me tell them first.
Oh man. Okay. So going back to that scene though, and I listened to an interview with Andy Stump, and so I loved how he picked apart the entire scene. He
didn't like it.
He did not like it. There were some choice words, but if I'm not mistaken, you mentioned something about squib.
Yeah, so a squib is that thing that blows up and makes a little blood, show.
Yeah.
But for me, they put it in the headrest. So it was really cool actually to see how they do the whole thing. And I wanted to actually do the car crash. So in my little shootout with Chris Pratt, there's a little car crash first. Land Cruiser runs into this, essentially like a little rental car. And I thought, I can do that. Yeah, no problem. And they wouldn't let me do it because I'm not part of the Stuntman Guild or something. And then I saw the hit, and it was hard. So I'm like, no problem. I'm glad they did not let me do that. But the guy who doubled me is Mick Rogers, legendary Hollywood stuntman, who he doubled Mel Gibson in Lethal Weapon when he's handcuffed to that business guy on the top of that roof and jumps off. So that's the same guy. And he was just awesome. Just such a cool guy. So they did that. He got in the car, did the crash, then I get in, and the way they put bullet holes in glass was also new to me. So they take these little like metal straws and they're lined up just under the dash, so the cameras looking in can't see them. And then as Chris is shooting in, there's somebody off to the side with an iPad who's hitting that, and it's a little mortar. So a tiny little ball bearing shoots up from the other direction into the glass and puts holes in the glass. So you have to have your sunglasses on so you don't get any glass fragments in your eyes. And then Chris killed it. The squib is in the headrest, so it's a little like packet of red gel that explodes. And so when Chris shoots me in the head, I throw my head to the side and they hit the squib and it goes all over the roof and windows of the car. But I did have to have a little talk with Chris though beforehand, and I had to let him know that if this was real life, things would go down a little differently. And just need to be clear on that.
So speaking of the Terminal List series for Amazon, some of you may or may not know, there is a writer's strike in Hollywood. And so how has that impacted the subsequent series?
Yeah, so we're rolling into a spin-off series with Taylor Kitsch playing Ben Edwards, and that's one of the characters that in the show I thought was much more fully developed than the character in the book. And then when what Taylor brought to that role just elevated it to the next level. So that's the spin-off series with him, and then we roll that right into True Believer. But we're in the middle of writing these scripts. I think we're on script 5 of 7 episodes for the spin-off series for the prequel origin story. So it's pencils down right now, and I'm not part of the guild yet. I think I would be after this because I'm writing the finale for this one and for the True Believer one as well. But so out of respect for what they have going on, I'm pencils down too. It just means that I reprioritize and keep working on book 7.
And so no working on it, like, period, because your books are so thoroughly outlined before you start writing. So you're able to really compartmentalize. Nope, I'm not going to do anything whatsoever.
Exactly. So, I mean, maybe if you didn't have anything else going on, you'd be tempted to do that. But for me, I'm like, well, however long it takes them, I'll just focus on book 7. And then I have a nonfiction book coming out in a year and a half on the 1983 Beirut barracks bombing. So working on that right now, too. So there's plenty to keep me busy as they work out the writer's strike deal. But for that one, I mean, it's the streaming stuff has been kind of building for a while. And then with AI hitting hard this last year, it kind of became both AI and streaming for the writers. So we'll see how long that takes to work out.
Last year with In the Blood, there's Alice, and it was chilling to know that, wow, okay, you've obviously got your finger on the pulse. And there was the comment that you have made in several interviews that of people who within the community that any further it would be science fiction.
Exactly.
And so here we are with ChatGPT just taking off in the past 4 months. And it seems to be evolving by the nanosecond.
Yeah, no, so the ChatGPT, I got a lot of calls in January, and I'd never heard of ChatGPT before, and I started getting all these calls and texts and emails saying, this is like your last book, and what did you know?
Jack Carr is dead.
Yeah, so it's, I started getting those, and it's so interesting. It got here, so it's not really a question of if we should or could, it's here, and it's about management from this point forward. But in the last book, it was quantum computing and AI, the coupling of those, and then looking at how far ahead China, or where China was. And as of my last book, which was a year ago, we were still ahead in the quantum computing AI space. But years passed, and I don't know where we are anymore as far as that goes. I would think that we're still ahead of China there, and they have a little bit of a lead when it comes to passive targeting and hypersonic missiles, from what I understand. And passive targeting, for those who've seen Top Gun, remember he got missile lock, and you know it, and you're like, what do I do? And passive is like you don't know, and they can hit you from anywhere. So you're just here, and there's nothing that can tell you that this thing is coming, but you've been locked on, and off you go. So yeah, a lot to explore.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, what's your take on ChatGPT as it pertains to people who write fiction and whatnot? Do you see this more as a tool where somebody can use this as something to help them with a novel outline? Whereas they were in the writer's world, there's plotting where you outline everything, and then there's pantsing where you fly by the seat of your pants and you just make stuff up as you're going. So do you see this as more of a tool when somebody's using it, quote unquote, more, I guess, in an appropriate sense of the word? Or
yeah, I don't know. It's for kids coming up now, it's going to be their normal to just ask this ChatGPT a question and kind of go with it. So that's kind of different for me. I still like the heart and soul of writing, and what makes these books stand out, what make them so personal and meaningful to me is that all my heart and soul goes into these, and not just from a work standpoint, but from the emotions and feelings behind events that I was involved with downrange. So if it's an ambush, I remember what it was like to be ambushed in Baghdad 2006, and I just take those and apply them to a totally fictional story. Same thing with sniper ops. I think what it was like to do that job, and then I take those feelings and emotions and I put them into the novel. So will ChatGPT be able to do that? Maybe in one way, shape, or form, but it certainly wouldn't be very therapeutic to me to sell this machine to do it and then I go off and just like wait for it to be done. So if I use ChatGPT or something like that, I think I might explore using it as like a research assistant and just having a separate computer set up maybe that doesn't have anything else on it, because I heard you have to give it access to all your stuff so it gets to know you. I don't know if it's true or not because I haven't touched it yet.
That's not chilling.
Yeah. So have a separate computer at least that only does ChatGPT and say something, along like put a research paper together on me for me on for this book, I'd say something like the 1983 Able Archer exercise that almost resulted in a nuclear exchange between the United States and Russia, and just use it as a research thing, maybe. But I guess I haven't tried it yet.
Okay, there are many ways that we can go with this, but I want to start first with the research that goes into all of your works of fiction, particularly a certain torture scene. This is not giving anything away. I have finished the book, but I promise that I will not give anything away. But there's a certain torture scene of a Russian involving a certain plastic tool. I'm dancing around this. Is that something that is real, or did you completely make that up?
Of course I made that up. That would be awful if that was a real thing.
Because I read the Gulag Archipelago, and I know some of the torture techniques that they actually use in the gulags. I'm like, wow, I've never heard of that, but that sounds so Russian.
Yeah, no, that is from the Gulag, actually. So I like to weave some history into these pages, not just for like different events here and there, but things like that develop that you have to really think of, not just, what's a cool new interrogation torture technique to weave into the book. It has to work for the characters involved. So in this case, you have a very Russian, not just somebody with a little bit of a Russian background. So you have to figure out the psychology of what's going to get to that person. So I like to weave that sort of thing in there as well. So a lot more thought goes into it than just shoot him in the other leg or whatever. It has to fit the story.
You can only kill somebody so many times.
You shot me in the other leg. Yeah. Right.
You shot me in the toe.
Very badly burned.
Yeah. No, but I also want to go back to something here. Let's see, because I have dog flapped pages.
Oh, look at that.
I want to go to Ukraine, and I know this is something that a couple of people have wanted me to ask you about. So your take on Ukraine. This is something that you had brought up in a previous book, and there's a lot of stuff going on with these certain parts of the world. So if you can talk about that.
Yeah, so some of these things aren't very difficult to predict. People say, you read the future. No.
You're a prophet.
It's common sense in a lot of cases. But my second book, True Believer, there's a threatened Russian invasion of Ukraine for certain reasons that are outlined in that novel. But in the research for that, I read a book called Accidental Superpower by Peter Zihan. And it's talked about, no, written in 2014. I read it in 2016 on my way to Mozambique doing research for True Believer. But he predicted the exact year that invasion would have to occur by because of steep Russian population decline and how they wouldn't be able to field an army at that level if they went past 2022. So he predicted it back in 2014 to the exact year. And I've incorporated a lot of his work into the strategic geopolitics of my novel. So, and it just happened to fit into this story as well.
In a previous interview, you had also mentioned that some of the writing in this book is reflective of what's on your mind. And that's quite evident as well. And there are parts where you talk about social media use and how divided we seem. And so if you could talk about some of that and how you think about these things when you're putting this from your mind into the monitor.
Yeah, so there's a lot of I guess things that are on my mind, I guess, in here, but I like my readers to get to know my protagonist because of what he's thinking. So he's not just doing things. He's not the same person he was in the first book as he is in this book. He's on a journey just like we all are. He's learning. He's applying lessons from past failures and successes to future or current decision making right here. But he's learning. He's evolving. But I like for me, if I'm in, let's say, Northern Virginia, and I'm armed, and I have to take an off ramp and go into DC for like a minute. Well, I'm going to think about now I've become a felon for this minute or two. And so would my protagonist, because he's a student of the gun and he knows those things, or he thinks about those things. And someone who is a student of the gun would think about those things. So it's kind of odd for me sometimes to read books that a protagonist isn't thinking along those lines if he has a background that allows him to do the things that he's doing. So I like to incorporate a lot of that in here because you get to know the character.
How much of yourself do you see in which character the most? Like, which character do you see Jack in?
Well, I mean, James Reese has a background similar to mine. So he was a former Navy SEAL sniper, enlisted, becomes an officer. When people meet him in the terminal list, he's going to come back from his last deployment as a troop commander, and he's going to reevaluate things because that's the last time that he's going to tactically maneuver guys on the battlefield. That's where I was when I started writing this. I'd come back from my last deployment to Iraq, and I was a troop commander there, and realized that if I stay in, I'll go to a staff job somewhere that I will absolutely despise, and then I'll have to come back as a SEAL team commanding officer, which sounds impressive, but really in today's day and age, if you're a commanding officer of a team or an element, you're really back in a tactical operations center, and you're allocating assets. And yes, you're a leader, but you're not tactically maneuvering guys on the battlefield, kicking in doors, doing that job that drew most of us to the SEAL teams or to special operations in general. So when I got back from that one, I picked my head up, looked around, realized my family needed me, and I thought, okay, it's been a good run here, and it's been a solid run, and it's time to get out and follow this next passion, which is writing.
And it seems like this is something that, if you were to reverse engineer your career, this is something that it seems like an obvious next step for you. You've been reading since you were a boy. Your mom was a librarian, and this is like something that, it almost seems cliche, like you were born to do this. This was the book that you were born to write. And then the next one, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I just listen to that calling. I think we all have something in us that calls us to do something. And for me, it was military service, serving my country, testing myself in the SEAL teams, in BUDS, SEAL training, and then writing. I knew that after that time in the military, I would write, because back in the 80s, they were kind of a source material for me, because you could find the end of the internet. If you went to the library and looked up things on special operations in the 80s, you could essentially get to the end of that shelf, and that was about it. Specifically if you're trying to research SEALs. But in the pages of these novels by guys like Tom Clancy and Nelson DeMille and A.J. Quinnell and J.C. Pollock and Mark Golden and Louis L'Amour for Last of the Breed, for those who have read that, Stephen Hunter, they had protagonists with backgrounds that I wanted in real life one day. So I just dove into these books. I absolutely loved them. By age 11, I was for sure reading those same kind of books that my parents were reading. About fifth grade is when I stopped reading the young adult fiction and started reading the stuff that my parents were reading. And I've been reading those novels ever since. So it gave me really an early education in the art of storytelling, like from the fan's perspective. Not something, it wasn't age 11, 12, 13, reading these things, through a Machiavellian type of an eye, like in the future, this is going to help, this is going to really pay off. But it has, because there were, I think, less filters in place, meaning at age 11, 12, 13, I'm just loving these for the magic of that story. And as I'm reading it, there's not some of that, maybe that cynicism that builds up over time as we get older and have more experiences. And I was just loving them for what they were. And I'm trying to do that same thing now, which is why, well, if anybody from Simon & Schuster is here, David, earmuffs David Brown. So don't pay too much attention to deadlines.
I heard you're not a fan of deadlines.
Yeah, that's not really. Because it's all about the story. So I don't want to get to, I'm creeping up on my deadline, I've got to rush to finish this, or I've hit 100,000 words, 105,000 words, time to wrap this up. No, never. It's however long it takes to make that story the best it can possibly be. That's what's going to get all of me, because people are trusting me with their time, and they're never going to get that time back. So that's something I take extremely seriously. And if I need to push a deadline or a publication date, I have no problem doing that, because it's all about the story. I mean, it's for your time, it has to be about that story. So I have to honor that story and put all of me into it.
It's just like the internet. It's forever. You can't unwrite something. You can't just go back in and be like, oh, you know what, backspace, insert, and then republish. I mean, the books, we're all holding them already.
Yeah. We call it a fire and forget weapon system in the military. So once that thing, you press that button, it's gone. There's no pulling that thing back.
And where it goes, it lands. You can't unfire it. How many, so do you write 1,000 words a day? Do you write 10,000? Brad
Not
Taylor
10,000.
said 8,000 at one point, I think.
He did 8,000 in a day?
Okay, John.
Jeez.
John.
Fact check. Fact
check. I think he did say 8,000, I think, was his record.
Interesting.
And he was under a deadline.
Wow, that's crazy. So I did, so some days there's 0, just because there's other things that are happening, or there's scripts or whatever else that I'm working on. But I think my record is 56, I want to say, somewhere between 53 and 58. So 56. 100
in one sitting, or
in one day, from like when I wake up until, so probably a 24-hour period. That's probably an all-nighter. So I pulled 3 all-nighters on this one. They're getting harder to do for anybody. The first books, it was like, no problem.
Yeah.
Savage Son, like, that hurts a little bit. And then this one is like, oh my gosh, it's just like I got floored, like Mike Tyson hit me in the face. But so it's getting harder and harder to pull all-nighters. So, but we have 3 kids, wife, dog, all that stuff. So you're constantly juggling, and I know the kids will not be in the house forever. So one day I'll miss those interruptions. So now I just, I don't want their memories of me to be like, hey, I'm trying to work in here, because then once you do that, you're like, now you can't work because all you're thinking about is that. So I just I treasure the interruptions as well. So and I just know it just makes things take a little longer, and that's okay.
Absolutely. So when you write the 5600, because I'm curious now, is it like
that was
2 pages?
That's the record. That's like not healthy to do that.
But is it an hour here, and then you go and hang out with the kids, take them to school or whatever, make lunch, and then you go back and you're writing for 45 minutes, and then you do something else, or all at once?
Yeah, no, that's a full on wake up all the way. So that was the all nighter.
Oh wow, okay.
So yeah, with no breaks.
And with all the research that goes into these books, are you writing? And then like you write, and then maybe you make a note in the middle of something. You're like, okay, I think this might be wrong, so I'm going to make a note, go back and fact check, and maybe you put in parentheses and you go back on your second or third rounds. How does that work?
Yeah, I'll put either X's if I need to go back and like something's missing here. So I'll put a bunch of X's there. And then that's mostly in the outline stage because I'm still figuring out, okay, how's he going to get past this? Not quite sure, but I know in a year and a half, I'll figure that out. So I don't let it stall me out there. But then when I get to the narrative and I start writing, if I know I need to come back to something, I'll put either X's or I'll put something in parentheses like need a chapter with, let's say, the Russians here or something like that. And I haven't quite figured out what yet, then I'll do that. And sometimes I'll make something red if I know I need to come back to it and just give another eye on it. But I don't want it to stall out the flow. So I'll just keep, so if I get stuck somewhere and it might it might stall things out a tiny bit, it'll get turned into red, or it'll get the X's, or it'll get a little bit of some parentheses, and that's it. But I'll just keep going. Just want to get through it, and then go back and make it great.
Because it feels like you can fall into a research rabbit hole on YouTube, just looking for something. It's like, okay, well, did the Russians do this in 1978? That's a reference to In the Blood. Did the Russians, in fact, do this in 1978 with the scientist who got whatever? And then 10 hours of YouTube videos later, you have only gotten 2 sentences done because you were trying to verify it.
No, I've never gotten that stuck. Is that personal experience?
Actually, no.
I haven't gotten that stuck before, but I'll order books, or I'll find something like, this is referenced in, book XYZ. I'll order it. So that means that'll kind of go on hold maybe for a little bit until that book gets here, and then I'll do a speed read of it or a skim, or go to that chapter or something like that to confirm something in another book or something I saw online or whatever else. But I don't do too much research on YouTube. Most of the research that I've done on YouTube has been like weapon systems, like something I'm not familiar with that I haven't used in the military or didn't or as a citizen, and that I can't get my hands on quite yet. So I'll do some research.
It seems like you know every gun in the history of the world, though.
Well, I know who to reach out to if I don't. So I definitely know more of the modern weapon systems.
Gotcha.
But especially the ones that I actually worked with, but even some that I didn't. But I know who to ask about other things. Like, hey, what would you use in the agency in 1968? Like that sort of a thing. Like, what were you guys using in Vietnam? What were you issuing in other places? Did you have things in Germany or wherever you were? And so I know who to reach out to ask those types of questions. And then I can go be like, okay, and then go deep into that weapon system to bring it to life.
Wow. Okay, so do you have this guy on speed dial, or are you making notes as you're writing? Okay, call John Doe about the 1968 weapon after this draft.
Yeah, it's a robust Rolodex. It's in my safe.
Ooh, man.
Yeah, but some are like that. Some are like, oh, reach out to Monty LeClaire at Centurion Arms because I know he knows something about sniper weapon systems from 2004. Mm-hmm. That'll be my guy, or whatever it is, because I know who is using what at what year that I need to go back to.
Yeah.
And so I can make a note and then hit them later if it's too late. Because oftentimes it's like 3 a.m. and I'm still writing because that's when no one's interrupting me in our house. That's about the only time no one's interrupting me in the house. So I do tend to write fairly late, but I'll make notes like that because I can't just call or text somebody at 2 or 3 a.m.
Why not? It's Jack Carr.
Yeah.
He wants to know about the gun.
I'd like to be able to call them back in the future if I need to revisit that weapon.
Dang it, Jack, again. Ignore.
Yep.
So in the research process of a book, especially when we're dealing with things that are changing by the day, by the week, by the month, at what point in your drafting process do you say, all right, it's done, and I'm not going to change anything? Like, is it a month, 6 months prior to the final draft, or 6 days?
Eventually it goes to print and you're done.
Right, yeah.
But so it'll be up until that day. I'll still find
Really?
things. Oh yeah.
Oh,
I've always
man.
thought if I could keep reading any of these books for the next 40 years and find things each and every time, make them a little bit better every single time, find a little mistake here, a little mistake there. Even copy editing stuff, because your mind, it's so crazy how many copy editors they have working at Simon & Schuster in the basement somewhere. But your mind just puts in like an "and" that is an "and," and you put in the right thing. So it's amazing for those little ones like that. So there's always going to be little things like that. But yeah, you can always go back and make it a little better. So up until the last second that I possibly can, I'm still rereading something. I'll just be in bed and all of a sudden I'll be like, oh, wait a second. And then I'll either get up or I'll roll over and send myself an email. So I have this one email account that is just for the book. So I have one computer for each book now. And that's not the most cost-effective way to go about doing this. But each book gets its own computer. So it starts with a essentially a clean draft, clean screen, all that sort of thing. But it has an email there that's just for me to send myself emails. So it's not cluttered with a bunch of other things. So I open that up, and any email in there, unless it's like a Microsoft update or something, because you have to get the updates for Word, but it's just for the books. I'm not scrolling through, getting distracted by anything else. So those go in there. But yeah, it's just to make things more as effective and efficient as possible.
Yeah, love it. Hey, are we ready for some audience questions?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Yes. Audience questions.
Who's coming up to the mic?
Oh, you got to come up to the mic because this is a podcast.
Yeah, it's whoever wants to come up to the
goodness.
mic can drink coffee, pet dogs. I love it.
Nice.
All right. Your name and your question, and you can talk right into the mic.
All right, my name is.
Sorry.
Oh,
Go ahead.
that was a lie, wasn't it?
We have to start over. That was not recording.
We're good.
Now, my name is Andy Morrison. I sort of had two questions, I guess. First one is, since there's a prequel with Ben, is there going to be anything on the Hastings with Rafe specifically?
Yes, that's a great question, and there's a lot of things in the works out there, and we'll see which get developed and when. Probably a lot of it is dependent on how this one does, how this origin story prequel does, and if the scripts are any indication, it's awesome. Like, I'm so fired up for this. It takes things from, like, the terminal list is a revenge thriller, conspiracy thriller, action thriller, and it takes things international. So this is more of an international espionage thriller that takes Ben Edwards from his time in the SEAL teams, transitions into the CIA, and then goes from there. But a lot of the characters that people will get to know in this prequel are characters that they're already introduced to if they've read True Believer. So it's a really cool way to introduce people to the True Believer characters through this prequel story that's not attached to a book, other than that the characters are the same.
Awesome. The other question I had, you tell the story of Jared, how you kind of helped him out as a SEAL commander. Do you have any leadership advice for those of us that are starting to move into sort of a leadership role, how to take care of their people, how to see that he needed help and know to take him aside and talk to him?
Yeah, it's all about trust, and trust with those, and for military terminology, above and below you in the chain of command. So for me, the things that everything's an opportunity for that, to build that trust, to first establish it and then build it. And every situation is going to be a little different, but I think it's recognizing that no matter what interaction, how it's brief, whether it's a 2-minute conversation in a hallway, or in my case, getting out there on the range to shoot or to make decisions in a field training exercise, those are all opportunities to build trust. So there's never any interaction with anybody that you work with up or down the chain that isn't an opportunity to continue to build on that trust, because when you're building it with those people above you in the chain, it gives you freedom of maneuver, because they can, like, okay, these guys have got it. I'm going to go focus my efforts over here on this problem child or problem platoon or whatever it might be. So it gives you a little more freedom to do the job, a little more autonomy, which is always beneficial. And then the guys below you in the chain of command also. So building trust with them personally and professionally, and for them to know that you're going to take care of them as best you can, personally, professionally, so that when it comes time to go down range and you're making these decisions under fire, it continues to be based on trust.
All right. Well, thanks so much, man. I appreciate it.
Hey, absolutely. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
Anybody else? All right. Oh, yeah. Here,
right.
let me adjust the
What's
mic,
up,
man.
man?
I'll adjust the mic.
Look at this back in this corner. I feel like my back's to the wall. I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to fight my way out of this thing. There's a lot of you guys.
You're trapped.
I don't know. I have to go through this case. Yeah.
I have 2 questions.
Sir.
My first question is, how many books do you have planned?
First question, how many books do I have planned? I do get that question a lot, and I love writing. I've always loved writing, so I'm going to continue to write forever in one way, shape, or form. But for James Reese specifically, I don't have a certain number. I'm not like, when I get to book 12, that'll be it, or when I get to book 20 or book 10. I'm just going to write it as long as write the character or characters as long as I possibly can. And then I also, going back to the question on Rafe Hastings, I very intentionally wrote in other interesting characters like Rafe Hastings, but not just peers of James Reese, my protagonist, family members. So we have multi-generations. So we can go to Rafe Hastings' dad and grandfather and James Reese's dad and grandfather. So I can explore things that happened in World War II, after World War II, in Vietnam, after Vietnam, in the 70s and 80s. So it gives me a lot to work with. So I don't think I'm ever going to run out of ideas. And I have this nonfiction book, as history is so important to me. And I think it should be important for everybody. So I really want to preserve some of these lessons from things like the 1983 Beirut barracks bombing so that future generations don't have to learn those same type of lessons in blood. So I have there's a lot of things on my strategic plan, and I'm excited to write about all of them.
And then my second question is, how do you come up with the plot for the books?
Ooh, good question. How do I come up with a plot for the books? So for the first one, I wrote down 6, 7, 8, 9 different ideas, 1-page executive summaries, and I put them on a table, and I looked at all of them. And the one I wanted to start with was my third one, was Savage Son, because back in 6th grade, I read The Most Dangerous Game, which was a short story by Richard Connell written in the 1920s. And I told myself back then that one day I'd write a thriller that paid tribute to that short story. So that's the one I wanted to start with. It's very tempting, but I knew that the characters weren't developed enough to explore the themes of that novel, which was the dark side of man through the dynamic of hunter and hunted. And I knew that I had to come out of the gate with something that was primal and visceral and rooted in the realities of modern combat and was going to be just very hard hitting in order to get noticed by a New York publisher and also to introduce readers to this new character. So the Terminal List was the obvious choice right there. And even at the end of that one, I knew the characters weren't quite ready to explore the themes of Savage Son, so I wrote True Believer at the end of that one. Then I knew that Savage Son was the one after that. So up to this point, I've had the same. What was your question again? I got so excited.
My question was, how do you come up with the plot?
The plot. So anyway, those 6, 7, 8, 9 different ones have turned into some of the future novels. Some of them not. Like The Devil's Hand was based on a conversation I had with somebody in 2016 down in Argentina about the 9/11 attacks. So that one got me thinking about that. I knew I wanted to do something that explored what the enemy would have learned from us by watching the United States in the field of battle for the last 20 years at the time. So in 2016 or 2017, I had that conversation with this guy. So I wrote that one down, and that became years later Devil's Hand. But some of those first 6, 7, 8, 9 different ones have become the other novels in one way, shape, or form, or at least inspired them. So there are some that just come naturally, and some were part of that initial group of ideas that I wrote down back in 2014. Yeah.
Thank you.
Those are amazing questions. Thank you for asking.
Yes.
Also, thank you for your service.
Oh, thank you so much.
Hey, I want to know,
Thank
man.
you.
Come back on the mic. First, what's your name? Because we didn't catch your name.
Sullivan Duvigneau.
Sullivan, what is your favorite book from the Terminal List series? Choose wisely. Just kidding.
Probably the 5th.
The 5th one. All right.
So the last one. So,
A man.
Oh, wow. Amazing.
What was
So
your
in the
favorite?
blood.
What was your favorite scene? It's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
You don't even put him on the
I
spot.
forgot.
That's all right. It's good. That's all right. That's all right. Oh, nice. That's a good. I get that a lot. The boxing scene in the meat locker. Yeah.
Yeah, that one was fun, man. That one was fun.
That was a good one. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Sullivan.
Appreciate it.
Really.
Awesome.
That was great. Everybody, give it up for Mr. Sullivan. While we have our next reader come up, I want to follow up with that because he's obviously interested in these books. What would be a good, I'm guessing, Sullivan, are you in like what, 5th, 6th, 7th grade? 5th grade, what would be a good history book? Because, you talk about the importance of history, and I 100% agree. What would be a good history book for a 5th grader to read that maybe, the school system is not going to encourage them to pick up?
I'm not 5th grade quite yet, but I think historical fiction is a great way for, and there's a lot of young adult historical fiction out there that introduces people to different events in history through the eyes, usually of somebody their same age. But I don't know that it's been a while since I was in 5th grade. And there's been a lot since then. But I think that's a good introduction. That young adult historical fiction right there. And then once they get to 6th grade, depending on reading level, 6th, 7th, 8th, then they can graduate to the same sort of things that we'd be reading. And I think historical fiction for us is still a great thing to do, whether it's Killer Angels for Civil War, or it's Once an Eagle, which is my most recommended and gifted book, Winds of War, War and Remembrance, Caine Mutiny. Like, there's so much great historical fiction out there for us. I think once you hit 6th, 7th, 8th grade, it's time to be reading those same kind of books.
Cool. We got our next reader. What's your name and what's your question?
My name's Reese.
Hey, no way. Nice. S or a C?
Yeah.
S or a C?
Yeah, S.
Right.
Yes, sir. Yeah. I was just curious with your, well, actually, first, I want to thank you. You got me through, actually, the back half of my history degree at A&M. You distracted me enough to write my dissertation at the end of the day. So,
All right.
Nice.
appreciate you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you. And then I was curious, as you had a book turn into a TV show. Was the feeling of you publishing your first book for the first time, publishing the Terminal List, did you get the same level of excitement or elation from the publishing of your first book as you did the adaptation into the
That's a great question. I'm surprised no one's ever asked me that before. But yes, I hadn't really thought of it in those terms before. But yeah, absolutely. It was so cool. But every part of the process when we're doing that adaptation is new to me because I'm brand new to this whole thing at that point. So from getting it optioned by Chris Pratt, super excited about that. It's the only person I wanted to option it, to have that happen. Crazy excited about that. And then, everybody tells you that might not happen. The odds of it still happening are about 1% type of a thing. People like to tell you that. And I was always like, no, it's going to happen for sure. It's going to happen. The person that I wanted to optioned it, and the director that I wanted is involved. And anyway, so I never really wasted too much time. I think other people wasted more time thinking about it not happening than I did. So I was excited about that. Then excited to get introduced to the showrunner, which Chris and Antoine introduced me to. And a showrunner, for those here, is I just learned what it was when I heard it for the first time when I was introduced to him. But like a director in a film, a showrunner is kind of a similar position in series television because you have multiple directors, so you're kind of managing all of that. So that's a David DiGilio, amazing guy. And then he wrote the pilot, and I advised on it. So I was really just learning. He was teaching me. So we did that, and then him and Chris and Antoine took it out so that was exciting, doing that, having him ask me these questions and me seeing how this thing goes and learning some of the rules of screenwriting and seeing how that flows. And that was exciting for me. And then seeing Chris and Antoine and the showrunner go out to Amazon Prime and Netflix and Showtime and shop it around. And then this bidding war starts and Amazon ends up with it. So that's exciting. And then you're getting kind of closer because now they've infused it with some money. Then you put the writer's room together, so figuring out who those writers are going to be and being able to see what other projects they'd worked on, and then advising on all those scripts where I'm still learning that whole process and seeing how it's different from the book. And I went into it realizing that it's going to be different than the book. I'm just excited we're making it, And for Chris and Antoine and the showrunner, and for me, we just wanted it to stay rooted in the spirit of the novels, and for me, knowing it's going to change, that's just how it goes when you adapt something. So all that was exciting. Then casting, that was crazy exciting because you're seeing people you've seen in films your whole life, and they're like casting, like they want to be in this. And you're like, it's like a famous person, and you're watching this, and you're like sitting with Chris and Antoine, like looking at this, and you're treating you like a peer, and I don't know, everybody looks great to me. I'm just happy to be here, And so through that whole process, doing that, and then into production, the first day of filming, you're like, okay, now we're getting closer. Like things can still go off the rails, like at any time in Hollywood, but now we're getting a little closer. And so to see that, Chris sent me a picture of that, whatever that thing's called,
the clacker.
The clacker.
Yeah.
So to do that was awesome. And then being in the scene and doing my shootout with Chris, like all of it was exciting. But even after it's done, then post-production, because you can still screw this thing up in post-production. And I think a lot of things do get screwed up in post-production because everybody's on other projects, and then you have people that are making decisions on editing that aren't a technical advisor. So they don't know that this gun you have to show this thing get reloaded or you're going to lose part of your audience. And if you're worried about that, then you got to show this guy reload this thing. Change magazines, whatever, do a tack reload. So we had that in the room the whole time with Jared right there. So doing that. So that's exciting to see all those different cuts, a director's cut, a producer's cut, like 5 or 6 cuts of every episode. And then making your notes on them. And so that was pretty cool. And then into the marketing and advertising, like figuring out how that works and seeing what they're doing there, and then doing the premiere. Awesome. and we got a bunch of World War II veterans to come, which was absolutely incredible. I'd been to Normandy just 2 weeks earlier with a lot of them, and with my daughter, and she got to stand there on beach at Normandy with a guy who was the first out of his landing craft and on D-Day, and hear his story right there at 101 years old. And then he's at the premiere. They're in their wheelchairs, and it's just like, it was amazing. And then the actual premiere on the first, and then into, hey, what are we going to do next? The negotiations around bringing Chris back for a second season, and the spinoff with Taylor Kitsch and all that. So to see all of that, I was excited at every single part of that process. But every one of those things, I'm learning something new, and it felt like getting the first book published. Yeah. It did. That's a very long answer to your question. I'm sorry about that. I get so excited. See?
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, absolutely.
At the next signing, you're going to be cool. It was cool. It was awesome. It was awesome. Yeah. And I want to follow up on that, because something you had mentioned, I think it was on.
You just reminded me. So remember that thing on Saturday Night Live when is it Chris Farley, where he's talking to like Bruce Willis or somebody? Remember? When he's like, remember that time in Die Hard? Yeah, that was awesome. So yeah, I had Sylvester Stallone actually wanted to talk about a project. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like for me as a child of the 80s, like this is amazing. But I was thinking about that the whole time. I was like, I don't get starstruck that often, but there I'm trying to sneak a picture of the Zoom call and everything. And I was like, yeah, I'm just going to ask him, like, remember First Blood? That was awesome.
Gosh.
Sorry.
We're gonna get to your question,
Nope.
and I wanted to follow up on something, because he was asking about the show. Then you talked about wanting to work with Chris and Antoine, and something you mentioned on Rogan. I think Rogan mentioned it to you. Is like you manifested this whole thing. It seems, because you wanted to work with Chris as you were writing the draft for Terminal List, and now he's in it. You wanted to work with Antoine, and I think this is something that we talked about a couple of years too. And he's one of the executive producers. So let's manifest something here. If there was going to be another TV adaptation of another novel, who is an actor or actress that you would love to see?
I can't answer that one now, because otherwise, if that person isn't cast in that role, then you answer that question forever. Like, were you disappointed that the person?
I know you wanted George Clooney, but come on.
No, there's a short list for Rafe. I often get that question about Rafe and who's going to play that role. So there's a short list there, working on that. But really, everything's on hold during the writer's strike. So however long that takes. And interesting to see like how much changes there and how many people that could have done it maybe during writer's strike or decide to do other projects or just things change. However, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. But yeah, there's a grand strategic plan out there with some cool stuff. And we'll see how far we get.
We'll take it. Come on up to the mic, man. Right. What's your name and what's your question?
My name is George Blitch. Thank you for coming here today. And on behalf of everyone here, we want to thank you for your service to this great country.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
And my question to you was, what are some of your routines to maintain a optimal state of mental and physical health?
Oh, okay. Hold on a sec. Things have gotten pretty busy over the years. I wish I could tell you that I got up at 3:30 every morning and that I hung from my gravity boots from the thing for like 30 minutes. And then I started my peat moss tea while I meditated or journaled, and then got in the sauna and back and forth between that and the ice bath, getting it for the gram, of course, where you get in there. But that is not the case. Every morning I'm shot out of a cannon with 3 kids, dog, wife, and it's just chaos trying to get everybody to school. Lunch is made. Where's your backpack? Everybody, parents know. Where's your violin? Is it a violin day today? Like those things are the same for everyone, I think. So I don't have the optimal routine yet. I know coffee in the morning, bourbon at night. You don't want to switch those. I know that.
No, definitely not.
So don't switch those up. But yeah, I'm just trying to be a better husband, father today than I was yesterday. Be a better author today than I was yesterday. Make each sentence that comes next better than the one before. Just like in the SEAL teams, wanted to be a better operator and leader today than I was the day before. Wanted to earn that trident every single day. And that's really what you owe the people that you're taking down range, the guys to your right and left that you're going to be leading into harm's way. So same thing today. None of that's really changed at all. I do stay up later though than I did in the SEAL teams, because for whatever reason. Well, this is a long book. If you guys have it in your hands there, it's 139,000 words. And
That's it?
when I started, I didn't know that it was going to be the longest one to date. Didn't know it was going to be the most brutal to date, but that's how long it took to tell this story. So, so that meant that some later nights, but at some point I'll get back into a routine. I have now built an outside gym that's like a Rocky IV style. So it's out there. It's really cool looking. And then as soon as we got it built, it snowed and it was under. So I couldn't possibly work out while it was covered in snow. But eventually, I think as I get more organized, that's one thing I want to work on is getting into more of a sane routine when it comes to all these things. But right now, it's all about prioritization. What's my front sight focus on today? What's my 5-meter target today? And tomorrow and the next day, this week. And because there's so many projects out there and having such a great time with all of them. So I'm just constantly learning. Just like James Reese is a student of the gun, a student of warfare, a student of history, a student of all that as well, and a student of my craft. So it's work, but it's not. Just like the SEAL teams never felt like work, this doesn't feel like work. They feel like they're professions. And I think there's a difference between a profession and a career. And there's a reason we don't call it the career of arms. It's the profession of arms. So that was a profession, as is writing. And I just love every single second of it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Cheers.
Thank you.
I'd love to follow up on something that he asked. I'd love to follow up on something that that you said, and that was that being a Navy SEAL didn't feel like work. And I've never heard it put that way, because I think of Hell Week and I'm like, wow, thank God there are men that are 10 million times better than me that would endure this kind of thing to do what you have done. So can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, it's certainly not better. It's just maybe, I don't know, looking for a mental fortitude and a grit, someone that can put themselves and wants to test themselves. And I think there's something in every one of us that from a younger age up to, let's say, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, there's this draw to test yourself primarily in military service. So and a lot of times you had to do something like that to prove yourself to the tribe, to prove your worth to the tribe and the community before you could become a valued member of it. So that's why Marine Boot Camp, I think, is such a draw. That's why SEAL Buds training is such a draw. That's why Army Q Course, Army Ranger School is such a draw, because you want to test yourself. And I was no different. I wanted to test myself in this crucible called Hell Week and see if I could make it. So for me, it didn't ever feel like work there either. It was more like I'd see people quitting to my right and left, and some guys would be like, "Oh, come back, don't quit," because you have the bell right there. So for those that don't know, you ring this bell 3 times when you're in SEAL training, and that means you voluntarily leave the program, you quit. And during Hell Week, they put it into a trailer hitch, and so everywhere you go, you see it. For most of the training, you have to run to a certain office and go ring it. But for Hell Week, you can see it the entire time for the entire week. And I, when people started to quit, I was like, this program's working. This person, maybe this isn't their sport.
Yeah.
So I liked that. So it was horrible, of course, but you're just cold, tired, wet, hungry, and you're running around for a week. And but for me, I dreamed of doing that my whole life. And so to have that opportunity to be there, doing that, testing myself. And for me, I loved it. I just embraced it.
Nice. All right. Name and your question.
Hi, my name's JD McGraw. I've spent the last year in Ukraine.
Oh, wow.
And was...
Oh, wow. Amazing. Wow.
Anyway, did you know Dan Swift by chance?
No, somebody sent me an article on him recently, though. Is he the SEAL that was killed over there recently? Yeah, I did not know him. I haven't read that article yet.
Yeah. Okay. Well, what Bud's class were you in?
213.
Okay. A lot of my friends were in 228.
All right. 228 was a solid class. There's a lot of people in 228 that...
a little guy named Marcus Luttrell.
Yeah, there was a lot of people. He's a big old boy. But yeah, there's a lot of amazing people in that class. Yeah, very cool.
Out of all the countries you went to, which one did you like the best?
Ooh, did I like the best? I don't know. That's a good question. Like for military, you mean? I only went to a couple, really, with the military, Iraq and Afghanistan. A few others, but...
okay, so mostly in the sandbox. Okay.
Yeah, but northern Iraq was beautiful. Northern Iraq, when things aren't raining down on your head in the springtime, it's pretty up there. There's parts of it that look like Northern California wine country. And Afghanistan, beautiful. The mountains of Afghanistan are just so stunning. I try to appreciate some of it what I can for what it is. Yeah.
Okay. Well, if you need any research on Ukraine,
all right. Thank you.
You can call me at 2:00 in the morning.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.
Which of the two do you see as the most likely or more likely to bounce back and be like the West?
What, Russia, Ukraine?
No, I'm sorry, Afghanistan or Iraq.
Oh,
keeping in mind, neither. Okay, I was going to say like in 100 or 200 years after everybody's long gone.
Still neither.
Still neither.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean,
that's
by a
okay.
long
That's okay.
shot.
There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah. No, it's sad when you think about it. Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's some beautiful stuff over there. Like
Yeah.
I wouldn't even put it in the sad category. I mean, there's but in every country, there's a different value placed on human life, include parts of our own here.
Sure.
But yeah, there's beautiful parts and there's ugly parts of every country. So, but when I think of Iraq and Afghanistan, I don't all of a sudden my mind doesn't just go to something horrible. I do think a lot of the beauty over there and the people that I worked with, and both on our side and host nation forces as well. So yeah, I don't think of them as just, like cesspools or anything like that. They're beautiful spots of those countries, for sure, no doubt.
What's your name and what's your question? I like your shirt, by the way.
Oh, nice. I actually have
love
one
that
on
shirt.
pre-order. My name is Julio. You actually answered a couple of my questions already that I written down, so I had to make up a new one.
How many do you have?
Well, I had 3, so this is the 4th. We'll go with this one. So my name is Julio, and given my medical background, I noticed some parallels between a character named Freddie and the journey with your son in particular. And how do you feel like the connection with Freddie and then James's quest to avenge him? Sorry for the spoilers.
Yeah, earmuffs for anybody that...
sorry.
Well, it's the second book, so, but there's still spoiler alerts from First Blood. So when I'm talking about First Blood, the book, it's written in 1972.
Yeah.
David Morrell introduced the world to Rambo in that book, and you feel like you shouldn't have to say spoiler alert, but there's very different endings. For those who haven't read the book and have seen the movie, you should definitely check out the book. Very different. Don't expect it to be the same, but both fantastic, but both different. But for Freddie Strain, our middle child has a condition. It's a genetic mutation of the NR2F1 gene, which is the same thing that I gave to Freddie's son in there. And it was just a touch point, a little bit of a way to honor our son and talk about some of those issues that families deal with that have special needs children that need 24/7 full-time care forever. Didn't start out that way, and the outline wasn't there. And then just naturally worked its way into the story. So oftentimes in the outline, I'll have things that happen beginning, middle, end, certain scenes that I want to have in there, locations, intent that I need to get from certain paragraphs or chapters in there. But it's not a full. It's not the story where I'm just adding a couple ands and thes and a comma to make this thing. I bring it to life when I turn that thing into the narrative. And oftentimes I don't even know a lot about the characters. I know the name and I know their position, but I don't know them yet until I put them in conversation with other characters. That's where I get to know them. Yeah. So I know who Freddie Strain was, and I know that he's a sniper, and he knew James Reese in sniper school and all that. So I knew, and he was in the first book, and he was pivotal there because of what happened, what I need him to do in the second book, how he needs to track James Reese down and why. But I don't know him yet, and then it's through these conversations that I get to know him, and that's where that all came out very naturally, which also made it more difficult to do what I had to do to him at the end.
Right. I think in other podcasts you mentioned that, or actually earlier you said that, it was quick to kill yourself off in the show, but I would have really loved for you to play Freddie in that.
Oh, well, thank you.
That would have been a really cool opportunity
that.
For you to see you downrange with a book in the sniper. As well.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Julio. All right. Beautiful. One more question. And it goes to...
My name is Tyler Bro. I have a very specific question about a character that I just happen to share the same hometown with. I know you do a lot of location-based research. I doubt you did any location-based on this one, maybe so. But maybe more motivations behind who I like to think of as the CIA Bobby Boucher and Jules Landry.
Oh yeah. You're gonna like the spinoff. Yeah. I shouldn't say any more than that, but you're gonna like that spinoff. But no, so I didn't go down to that part of the world or spend much time down there, but I needed to differentiate him from other characters because I try to lessen the confusion when you have characters in a book that share a similar background. Military, okay. Special operations, okay. both SEALs or SEALs, Army Ranger, Army Special Forces, Delta. Like, okay, we're getting close for people that don't have a background in the military. Kind of that gets blurred a little bit. So I need to figure out ways to differentiate these characters. Background, accent, obviously name. So that's where Jules Landry came from. But I think you're gonna like the spinoff.
Thank you.
We are approaching the 60-minute mark, which means it is over.
Oh my goodness.
And a special thank you to Murder by the Book, the best damn bookshop in the world. Thank you so much for bringing Jack, for letting me crash your party. I love them. I love them. I love them. And the book, Only the Dead. You're listening to the podcast right now. You got to go get it. It's JackCarrUSA.com, right?
It is officialjackcar.com. Close.
Okay.
And it's Jack Carr USA on the social channels.
There you go.
And I also want to say thank you guys for being here. It really means the world to me. You'd come out and spend some time tonight. So thank you so much. Thank you for all your support. And it just means so much to me, to my family, and thank you from the bottom of my heart. Thank you.
Give it up, everybody, for Jack Carr. Yes!
All right. Awesome.
Hey, it's me. I'm back with a quick little nudge. If you enjoyed this podcast as much as I did putting it together for you, then please leave a review on your favorite podcast platform and subscribe to the newsletter at cruisethroughhtx.com and share with your family and friends. Thank you.